Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Derwin, and I'm here with Shane Buell. So today marks the 2-year mark since the fire in Lahaina. That was August 8th of 23, and now it's August 8th of 25. So some time has gone by, but through the last couple years, I really try to keep this story alive because the mainstream forgot about it so quickly, like a lot of these other disasters. So that's one of the main goals that I had when I started reporting on this event in the first place. So we're going to talk about some of the, I guess, the information that has the most evidence of intentionality for this particular fire. We're going to start out with a testimony. This happened shortly after the event, and this is from a man who experienced this. So he's a local guy. I don't know his name, but he made a very powerful testimony. And these are the kind of things that I don't want, people to forget.
First off, the narrative bothers me. This was not a wildfire. This was a planned and choreographed fire of Lahaina town, and our town was burnt. I don't like seeing it or hearing called wildfires. We all know this was planned. At least that's my, and from everybody I've spoken with, believes. Why was there no water in the hydrants? I know people who were in the neighborhood that burnt, watched the hoses go down. We're the firemen who called it in and said there was no water. Land. We should all be allowed to build back. If they sell their land, there should be a moratorium to selling land to outside investors. Only Lahaina people should be able to buy. If you want proof that we're treated differently, like it was said, I was being held accountable for a National Historic District below the road for my windows. And yet the McMansions were being built because I didn't have a fat envelope of cash to pass under the table. That's the reality. That's the reality of what we live in. The rich take and we don't. Everybody should have the freedom of choice to go back to their land and build.
So unfortunately, the things that he was hoping for has not happened, and I don't believe will happen. It seems like the officials have put off the redevelopment as long as possible and have tried to get the locals out of the state so that they could move forward with the smart city development. And we'll go into a little bit about that later in this video. Something that was very suspicious is the change in the number of missing and deceased. Here is an earlier clip of Governor Green discussing the number of deceased and missing.
Governor, can you tell us how many are still unaccounted for and how long will it take to identify remains?
More than 1,000 are unaccounted for, about 1,050.
I know a local Maui official said a large number of the dead may have actually been children who were left home that day because schools were closed, many of them alone or with their grandparents. Is that the case?
That is possible. That's what we're sharing here internally. That is possible that there will be many children.
So as time went on, that statement changed. Until this day, the officials have only admitted to 3 minors who were lost in this fire. I'll put up some of the Department of Education enrollment numbers from the 21st of August. So this was like a few weeks after the fire. And so this is what it started with, and this is what it ended up weeks after. So there were many kids who did not enroll in public school shortly after this. Something else that we caught early on are the fairly large number of shipping containers where the deceased bodies were put. And this would accommodate for a fairly large number, at least I would say between 400 and 500 people, although the death count still stays at 104. I believe it's like 104 right now. It might have gone down since then. And Shane, do you want me to play the buses?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the only, we've had a lot of questions about, where are the missing kids? Where is the evidence that they were abducted or something happened to them? But we have not come across any evidence of that. And I really looked very hard. No one has come forward and said that they witnessed children being taken from the area or anything like this. The only thing that kind of suggests that this might have happened are these 12 school buses that were seen going into the area. And I'll play that right here. So the reason those buses are suspicious is that there are no markings on them. There are no numbers on them. School buses are supposed to have some sort of identification on them, and as well as the license plate, those are blocked out. And the windows are very tinted. They're actually very clean. They look brand new, but you can't see anyone in them, and you can't even really see the driver. So it is just very unusual. Shane, did you have anything to add about the buses?
I was going to add that those are pretty much brand new Bluebird brand school buses. And you can see that there's like no rust and the paint looks brand new and there's no markings. So I think that's very suspicious.
And then they did end up, do we know if they ended up at that little airport?
I can't be sure which buses went to which locations. So we did see 2 convoys of buses. This particular convoy was headed into Lahaina past Maui. And then the other convoy of buses was seen, I think, by Launiupoko, also headed north. So both of these convoys were actually headed to Lahaina instead of from Lahaina. Now, we had seen several buses that ended up at Kapalua Airport, as well as Pule Hunui. There's a ground transportation parking lot there that has several buses. I can't be sure which buses went where, but I do know that the Pule Hunui ground transportation parking lot with all the school buses in it also has Aloha Waste water treatment system right next door. And that's where the tunnels are that go 300 feet below the surface. So the ground transportation buses are right next door to the tunnels, but it's speculative at this point. I can't actually, I don't have any evidence to prove that those are the same buses that we saw going to Lahaina.
Okay. And then we're going to show some of these, should I start with the fire images here?
Sure.
So yeah, one of the weird, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, this is where the stuff that was floating on the water caught on fire. Some of these are boats and some of these are debris that was blown into the water. But you can see like there's the pier in the background and all the boats are on fire. And to me, that's anomalous.
Right, because normally if the boats are out in the ocean, the fact that they were all hit with an ember that would cause them to burn down is highly unlikely, right? Because they almost all got burnt. And then I think we have one. Do you want me to show the blue boat just really quick? This was the only hull that was intact from the burnt boats, right? And it happens to be blue. But
well, yes, and it happens to be the inner hull. It looks like there was an outer hull in this boat which burned away and left behind only the blue.
Okay, we'll go into the blue objects a little later, but here are some pretty iconic images from the time when the fire was active. Here's just a ring from one of the helicopters that was getting footage at the time. And here's the iconic Waiola Church. And Shane, explain why this is a little anomalous, the way the burn is going.
Okay, so you see all of the boards that are in the wall there, like facing us. You can see how evenly all of the edges are like energized and glowing, but like not really on fire. And even the roof itself has very little combustive flame. It almost looks like as if it's being energized by a separate source.
Okay, and then here I'm going to show some of the burn patterns that are not typical. And here is a pole burning from the inside and at the base. So as I started looking at these fires going forward, we noticed this is very common. The bases of wooden poles and the inside of wood tends to burn sometimes only, and it kind of ends up like this. Normally the burn would start at one end of the tree and work its way to the other, and it would start from the outside, right? The driest part of the tree is the outer part. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
normally it would burn from the outside in. Yes.
Okay. And here's another really unusual burn of a tree that is just on the inside. And we've seen this so many times since Maui. And we'll link a video of Robert Brame, who's an arborist, who explains, how this happens and why it's not a normal burn pattern. And then here's a kind of iconic picture of Lahaina during the fire.
Yeah, what struck me during, I didn't find the actual video clip, but what struck me is that the edge of the roof was burning so evenly in this photo. Now, it does look like there could be a gutter there, and maybe there was some debris in the gutter, but even a gutter should catch at one end and then burn down to the other end instead of the whole thing lighting up at the same time.
Okay, and I'm going to play some of the clips of I'm going to play the one of the witnesses that got stuck in the water, burned in the
Sure.
water. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's one of the statements that came out shortly after the event.
The fire was going into the ocean. The best way to explain it was a continuous bomb going off. So that fire was, there's boats on fire 50 yards out. So even in the ocean at points, we were still getting burned. At points we didn't know where land was. There's points where we're starting to pass out and we're about to drown. We had to come to shore. The cars that were parked next to shore caught on fire or exploding.
Yeah. So not only were the boats burning out in the water, but people were getting burned too. And I don't think that was just embers.
Okay. And then should I play the against the wind, how the fire was moving against the wind?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a clip that you can see the smoke clearly shows which way the wind is traveling. However, in this image, the fire is moving to the left. So the wind is going to the right and the fire is actually moving to the left at this point. This is right before it went into Waikuli. It was about 6:30 p.m.
And before the fire, a lot of people were saying that the wind and there was some sort of unusual energy in the air, almost like a static electricity or something. And a lot of weird things happened in areas before the fire even got to that area, like the AC unit exploded. That was like one of the first things that happened. And I know Jeff Sims, who barely escaped the fire, he said his car felt like it was about to lift up from the ground. And we think that is a result of the technology being utilized. And then something we also see with these fires is often cars are flipped over. And it's hard to explain how some of these cars got flipped over, because that's a very difficult thing to do. If they were to do that after the fire, I just don't understand why someone would go through the trouble of flipping a car upside down.
Right. As far as Jeff's experience goes, I think the air conditioner can be explained by electromagnetic induction. And it seems like there are some very strong updrafts within these fires, stronger than we've ever really seen before. Speaking of induction, I have another video that shows some really good evidence of that. This is from the Pentecostal church in Lahaina. And in a second, you can see more of the damage at the top of this church. This is the pulpit, which you can see is relatively unburned, even though there was a burning piece of wood that fell onto it. I do believe that the wood stopped burning when it fell away from the ceiling. Now you see what looks like a slice through the center of the ceiling there. But what I think actually occurred was electromagnetic induction through the wire that ran to the light fixtures at the middle of the ceiling there. So there was a wire for a light fixture that ran down the center of the building there. And I do believe it was struck by microwaves, causing eddy currents to be induced through the length of the wire, which would cause resistive heating and cause ignition of adjacent objects. So you can see it's only about an inch or two from the wire that actually caught fire. So I do believe that it was microwave induction that caused electric currents to flow through the wire. We know this because the power was actually off. There were like 17 phone calls that day to the power company, and they said the power was off.
And there's also photos that someone sent me from the outside, and it wasn't burned anywhere else. The outside was fairly intact.
That's true. Yep.
Okay, and then should we go on to the blue images of blue things?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Well, here's one, or maybe the cars. Okay, we'll show some of the car damage. Here is one that we've used before. This is Eric West, who reported a lot of this early on, and his information is where I got a lot of information, so I can do reporting. And that iconic metal, kind of melting down requires a very high amount of sustained heat. And if you look at this vehicle, it doesn't look like there was a lot of fuel to keep this car burning. It seems like it was like in an empty lot. And we see that, over and over again.
Yeah, it was an empty lot with short grass, actually. And grass only burns at a few hundred degrees.
Okay, and here is the windshield that was melted. And then also you can see the metal gets instantly rusted. And Shane could explain how that happens.
Yeah, so I believe this is Broda Spice's truck here. And you can see not just how rusted it got, but the glass did actually melt. And I have another image here. It's not as clear. Here's another. You can see just how glazed that glass is. So it was more than just softened. It was like kind of flowing and coating over everything. And so in order to do that, it would take over 25 to 2,700 degrees, hotter than any grass fire would ever burn.
Okay, I'm going to play the Kahoma Village clip so we can see this more.
Yeah, so this was captured by Jesse Wald in Kahoma Village. You can see that in the parking lot where there is no fuel, the aluminum stayed in a liquid state several feet from the car. That's unexplainable as far as natural combustion goes. So there just isn't the amount of fuel there on the ground to keep it flowing. And then here's a blue car, in the middle of the burn zone. And you can see that it did have a little bit of damage to the bumper, but compared to the other cars who were equally close to the townhome, it's relatively intact. And then over here,
like with blue cars, sometimes red and green cars tend to fare better than the other colored cars.
Yeah, it goes blue, green, and red in that order. And it's complicated. I didn't intend to explain that here, but you can see that the glass there is melted. And then the hubcap here looks to be intact, but the rim itself might have melted, which is really strange because aluminum got destroyed, but maybe plastic or whatever that is was still intact. And then here on the ground is those, well, I'll show that actually up close when it pans back. You can see on the sidewalk under the utility panels there, it looked like there was a fire because the utility panels are all blackened. Yeah, there was an underground fire. And then
right, the culverts tend to burn because of the metal, right? We're assuming.
Yeah, and then the nails on his fence right there, you missed it, but those were also burned. I think it might show it again. Yeah, if you look right there where the nails were is where it burned.
And then do you want me to go with the other blue, green, red?
Oh, yes. So this is one of the examples from Lahaina where you can see more than just blue had survived. And the colors that I've seen in Lahaina, Chile, even Paradise are blue, green, and red in that order. And it is the same thing at the tattoo removal clinic as well. They need to use separate lasers for blue and red.
Okay. And then here are the blue umbrellas at Tommy Bahama. So everything else burned, but the umbrellas are in really good shape. And something that is even more amazing, here's Eric West finding paper flyers that were not burned and everything else around it is burned. And we have video of that. I'll play in a second. Also, blue shirts were just untouched. You see better right here.
In the video, you can see he finds it like underneath the debris. So it was obviously in the fire.
Yeah, I'll play that. I think this one is it.
Yeah, so I think this is Eric walking south on Front Street. And you can see right to the right there is some sort of blue paper brochure or pamphlet that obviously was touching the fire because it's got scorch marks, but it didn't actually ignite all the way. And then there's the blue Honda Accord on the right on Front Street as well. There's a couple other blue items here. On the left is the mailbox that was right in front of Cheeseburger in Paradise, which you see there behind it. Cheeseburger in Paradise was completely destroyed. And then there's a blue Jeep on the left, which was also intact, despite the fact that these three cars kind of melted almost together. But yeah, you can see here's the blue Jeep, pretty much untouched. And this is at Limahana Circle.
And then there's a couple that I didn't show the aerial view of the car.
Yeah. So there's not only the blue car that you can see is untouched, but you can see all of the other cars that are burned have like a lighter colored ring around them. And that's where the asphalt was actually damaged and removed from the concrete. So most of the cars that burned up have like a 2 or 3 foot radius around them where there's missing asphalt. However, that did not happen with the blue car.
And when you're looking at this, because I understand this a little better now, there would have needed to be some sort of fuel source to destroy those cars that way. Even if an
Correct.
ember were to hit every single one, the chances of it destroying those cars, it would be very unlikely. So it would seem like there was some sort of energy coming from below or above, or maybe both, that targets certain types of materials such as metal, liquids, and organic material.
Right. The metals are more susceptible to the interaction with energy.
Right. And then, did I show this? This is like the blue boat that.
Right. So in the foreground is a blue boat that mostly survived. You can see like the top part of the boat melted or, lost structure a little bit. But behind it is actually a 2-story ferry boat, which has burned almost completely down to the water. And it just seems impossible for an ember to have done that.
Right.
Yeah, there's another picture of the
ferry. Is that the ferry?
Yes.
Here's another image of the car.
Yeah, and you can see the lights are on. The car was actually still operational.
Okay, and then here I'll show the culvert, and we see this very often. The fires coming from underground, and this seems to be something they repair right away.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that's due to a phenomenon called electromagnetic induction.
Okay, and here's a really iconic picture. And we've seen this in other events as well. And I was trying to wonder, try to figure out why just this house, why couldn't they have hit it? And it could be the color. Maybe there's some that's like a blue red. I'm not sure.
It is a metal roof, which should deflect embers, but it is also a red roof, which resists almost all colors of optical light, except for the 532 nanometer wavelength.
And these wavelengths are invisible to the human eye. So, when you hear people saying that there were visible lasers hitting objects, I just don't think that's the case, because it would just be too obvious. We're seeing things in the Palisades, and I was actually not far.
Right.
I didn't hear of anyone witnessing an actual laser. I think it's a different technology than what we're led to believe a laser is.
Yes. And if you were to go remove a color tattoo at the clinic, they would also use invisible lasers unless they were trying to remove red. Red actually requires a visible green laser to remove. And so maybe the reason that we saw red objects left over is because they didn't want to risk losing their plausible deniability by having visual green lasers.
Right. Okay, I want to discuss the roadblocks, because this was another really suspicious thing, that many of the roads going out of where the fire was were blocked. And so far, as far as the police chief has just denied that this happened. But let me play Fish. Here's an interview right after the fire, and this is what he said about the roadblocks.
And I walked all the way from Safeway to the chart house. Not one car had moved. And I was wondering what was stopping the traffic. Well, it was a policeman. And I got to the end and I looked up north. There were no obstructions. There was no reason to keep those cars there.
Are you serious?
I'm serious as a heart attack. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm under orders to keep them here. And I said, the fire is right around Safeway. It's going to hit Front Street. These people got to get out of here. And he said, I'm following orders.
No way.
And so I just kept walking. Well, maybe he knows something I don't, you know. So, and I keep walking down the highway, and I look behind, no cars are coming out. I walked all the way to Waikuli Beach, still no cars coming out. And I started hearing boom, boom, boom. And then I heard people screaming and stuff.
You're saying they were blockaded in by the police at the end of Front Street?
Yeah.
Like where the restaurant is?
Where the chart house
Where the chart house was, I should
Right.
say.
All right, here's another witness to the roadblocks.
Now I'm standing here at this critical intersection of Keawe Street leading down to Honoapilani Highway, which runs south to north as the primary exit northbound from Lahaina town. Keawe Street also leads to the bypass. The bypass, we know, was closed at 3:30 p.m. on August the 8th as firefighters battled the brush fire. I had a chance to ask the chief of police about the road closure which occurred here when downed power lines shut down Honoapilani Highway northbound. Witnesses tell me traffic was directed down Keawe Street and into the mall behind me, the Cannery. The only exit on the other side of the Cannery is Front Street. At 5:30, Herzog comes to the end of Front Street, and to his surprise,
it looks like two police vehicles parked kind of nose to that exit for Front Street, kind of at a V like this. The traffic had basically bottlenecked right there. So there were cars in both lanes trying to go north by this point, but everyone was stopped on Front Street right there.
As the maintenance worker walked past the gridlock, heading north on foot, at 5:33 p.m. motorists had been fleeing into the water, as seen in Noah Tompkinson's video, 1 mile to the south of the Front Street roadblock near Baker.
We want to get people out. And so let me answer it like this. There is going to be a very detailed long after action. It might be the longest after action that's ever been. Every data point is going to be scrubbed and looked at and meticulously gone through. And so we've already found that some of the false reports on the direction of travel were not correct. We were getting people out of the area. We were forcing people not to go at a certain point down Front Street because it had already gotten too late. And so the efforts were to get people away from the fire and away from the danger.
So they weren't directed down Keawe Street?
They were not directed toward the danger.
And that's only half the story. Evacuees have also given us video of road and lane closures to the south. The chief of police has not responded to a direct request to clarify what he meant by a false report of road closures.
Until this day, no one has taken responsibility for those roadblocks, whether they're intentional or accidental because of confusion or lack of leadership. No one has apologized or said that they made a mistake or made the wrong call. And there's just so much overwhelming evidence and testimony proving that this was what was going on. And many people lost their lives because they were caught in this roadblock or roadblocks. Here's another one. Look how far back the traffic jam went. So
yeah, it wasn't just the north end, it was the south end as well. There's basically only 2 ways out of town, and almost every road to the highway was also blocked. There was 10 roadblocks in total.
Right. And then I'm going to play some of Clyde's clips. So Clyde Holokai, he wasn't at the time assistant police chief, but he was previous to when this happened. And he did work under Chief Pelletier for a little while before him, as well as a number of other officers, some of them senior officers, went into early retirement. And he was one of the first outspoken people to, call out what went wrong.
If you're not used to that type of situation, at the very least, it's going to be very inefficient. And if you're not of the rank that you can command another officer across a different bureau to take action immediately, that's going to cause problems.
We had phenomenal partnership and integration.
Yeah, so that was a lie because there was no phenomenal coordination. And I just, with this video, I don't want people to forget what actually happened, because what happens is as time goes on, these people start patting each other on the backs and saying, what a great job you did, how wonderful everything went. This redevelopment is going to be amazing and how happy people are. But that I can tell you for a fact that is not the case in Maui. Locals there are not happy with how things went and are not happy with how things are right now, or at all. Here's a little clip about the way Chief Pelletier handled the emergency response.
Why do you say that?
Because of the way the EOC had been set up, up until this point, the office of the chief is to man the EOC, and that includes the chief of police, the deputy, and a senior assistant chief.
So the chief of police is supposed to be at the EOC?
Yes. Yes, up until this point, it's always been that way.
MPD confirmed Chief Pelletier was not at the county's Emergency Operations Center during the disaster. Instead, the department says he sent a lieutenant and later an assistant chief. Meanwhile, Pelletier was at police headquarters with several members of his command staff, setting up a department operations center. A task Holokai says is typically taken care of by an assistant chief, so the chief and other members of the chief's office are available to work directly with the county and leaders of other emergency response agencies. He says having the right people collaborating together in the same room is crucial.
So what we hear there is Chief Pelletier set up his own department emergency response center. Since I first reported on this, I have spoken to other officers who are very familiar with how things go. And I really wanted to find out, was his intent to thwart the response? Was he trying, to make things harder, or, why did he do what he did when that's not normally how things work? And the overall reaction I got from people who understand how things work at MPD is that he wanted to do things his way. He didn't want to go, he didn't want to do things the way previous chiefs did things. He wanted to be the hero. He wanted to have control over the emergency response. And ultimately, that led to more problems. But, over the past couple of years, that is what I gathered from, speaking to people who understand this very well. Okay.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to add is that not only was Chief Pelletier not where he was supposed to be, but Governor Green was also missing in action, as well as Mayor Bisson, Fire Chief Brad Ventura, and the MEMA Administrator Herman Andaya were all not where they were supposed to be when this happened.
And this is a common theme again. It seems like there is an intentional breakdown of command. So these events tend to happen when people in charge are not at their post. They're not in town, they're not in the state. So when things are not set up properly, the response does not go very well. And we've seen that with Kerrville, with LA, many of the different tragedies that we've been covering. Helene, yes. Top officials are not in town, and it really causes a big problem to the response. Okay, so should I go over the unusual satellite imagery and weather?
Sure, we could probably squeeze that in. I think we got time.
Okay, so let me start with this. Someone sent me this very early on, and this is a DBZ bullseye, and there were actually 2 on the island during the fire. And DBZ is a measure of moisture and precipitation. Is that correct?
Reflectivity in general, which usually measures precipitation, but at this particular time, there was none.
Okay, and then you can see there on the left, that's Lahaina. So it is very close to where the fire was. There was also, I didn't include it, but there was also a bullseye over Haleakala. And I don't exactly know what that has to do with what happened, but it is one of those unusual things that was caught on radar.
And there is also a Space Force base on Haleakala.
Right. Okay, and here is the unusual wave patterns, and I'll let Shane explain how this happens.
Okay, so yeah, this is a wide angle view that shows you cloud formations that were heading towards Maui. We're going to zoom in a little closer so that you can see that as they were coming into Hawaii, they're basically parallel and they almost look like mini blinds or fish bones. The normal meteorological term for these are called gravity wave clouds, but they sure look a lot to me like the interference pattern that can result from a phased array, an interference pattern called plane waves, which can be produced by phased arrays like NextRad and 5G, but they also can be produced by the C-based X-band transmitter that we have. It's like a giant golf ball in a boat, but it is capable of broadcasting at frequencies and powers way higher than your normal NextRad tower. And so it can produce interference patterns that would look just like this. And I do believe this is evidence that the wind on the day of the fire could have been augmented by ionic wind.
All right, so I'm going to move on to why. This was an intentional event. Like, why? A lot of people ask, why would they do this? And with this particular event, and it's not the same for every event, but this one is one of those situations where it's almost impossible to deny that this was used to destroy land, to redevelop the area into a 15-minute city. And here I'll show, I'll let you describe this, the burn zone versus the.
Okay. So what I did was I took an image of the plans, the redevelopment plans, and I overlaid an image of the burn zone on top of it side by side so that you can see that the burn zone actually matches the redevelopment plan almost exactly. Now, Lahaina is basically a perfect match when it comes to the burn zone. There's only a little bit of the Lahaina Luna neighborhood that was not burned, but you can see that the rest of the area in the yellow on the right pretty much matches the structures that were destroyed on the left. And it's basically a match, if you ask me. Now, we've seen this before on the island of Kauai, where they had the Hanapepe infill redevelopment plan, and it had burned up and actually matched the development plan. But nothing, I think, since Lahaina has been as much of a perfect match as Lahaina has. So the burn zone perfectly matches the redevelopment plans in Lahaina.
Okay, and then I'm going to play the speech that Governor Green made at the UN meeting. Is this the month before the event?
This might be, yes, July. I believe this was the month before the event, and this might also be the very same week that he declared the emergency proclamations.
Okay, so let me hear you. I'll play what he said.
In the old days, decades, generations, and even centuries ago, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people lived in Hawaii and had a sustainable culture for food. And that was something that we still recognize. To that end, we have done some things, and we hope to be able to share this much more in time. One is the Aloha Plus Challenge, which is a data-driven approach which we can share with our states and with anyone who feels that it would be helpful to track the SDGs, to make sure that we embed them in all of our policies.
All right, and just wanted to point out, as someone from Hawaii, I noticed, and this really bugs me, whenever they're trying to promote a plan or make something sound very good or positive, they give it a Hawaiian name as if that's going to make it okay. And I've seen this happen so many times with the bill they try to pass with the Lele community. Thankfully, that didn't pass, but I noticed that they put these Hawaiian words in to make it seem like it's a good thing. And since I've covered this, I've seen so many other situations where you hear of plans to, create transit-oriented development, create an area where cars are not needed, walking, public transport and biking is like the new mode of transportation, and also the stack and pack type of residences. So apartments, duplexes versus single family homes seems to be what their redevelopment is going towards, at least what they're trying to make it go towards. And we saw that very recently in LA. They're almost going to pass a bill that would allow the development of the Palisades and Altadena to turn single family residences into multifamily developments. So some of them are up to like 5 different units, whereas before there was just one. Another really suspicious rule with that one with LA was each residence was only going to be allowed 1 parking spot. And in LA, that's usually not enough. A family of 4 getting away with 1 car is usually unreasonable. But that seems to be what happens. Cars are destroyed and the structures are destroyed first versus, the brush and trees and other things that normally burn. All right, did I miss anything?
Not that I know of. I think we got all the images, and I think we got all of the videos that we intended to show.
Okay, so there was a lot that we had to, comb through because there's so many topics we've covered over the years, but I felt like these were the best, these were the most convincing. And, I really hope by us doing this, it raises more awareness and hopefully people won't forget that this happened, because a lot of people are starting to forget. But one thing that I'm really proud of with Shane and I, and as well as Michelle and Eric and anyone else who has spoken out with the Lahaina fire, is that this has been the, how do you say, like whenever we have another event, it's always the #1 event. Like when Helene happened, it's like, this is what Maui did, or when LA happened, it's like Maui, Helene, Palisades. It is the iconic disaster that people are starting to identify with the globalist agenda. And I'm really glad that I was hopefully able to put this event on the map. And I'm really glad that people are able to see this for what it is. And I hope that continues. I'm going to just close this out with a speech from Bryce Mitchell. This happened a few months after the fire. He's a well-known MMA fighter, and he won this fight against, his last name is Ige. He's from Hawaii, and he makes a really strong statement. And since then, Bryce Mitchell has come on other shows and voiced his strong opinions about what's going on in the world today. So I'll play that here.
Well, fight fans, after 3 rounds, we go to the scorecards, and here are the totals. 30-27, 29-28, and 29-28, all for your winner by unanimous decision, Thug Nasty, Bryce Mitchell!
Let's go! This is your time.
No, it's not, damn
it. You're going to stay right here and you're going to pray for this nation. This is your destiny from God. The world is watching you and you're going to pray right now. And I love you.
I'm here with the winner, Bryce Mitchell. Bryce, congratulations to both of you. Tremendous fight, back and forth battle. You were declared the winner. Talk me through the fight. How do you feel?
Take your time. He's the hardest hitter I've ever fought. I didn't expect him to be so fast and move so well. And his grappling defense is so good too. I brought this Bible in here tonight because I do believe Satan has taken over this earth. And something specifically I'm talking about is these fires in Hawaii. I'll be donating $5,000 to Dan Ige tonight to give to people in Hawaii, because I know he lost friends, they lost their homes, they lost their children. And I love these people with all my heart, and we have to show Satan that he can do nothing through the power of Christ when we come together.
Let me ask you about your eye. Obviously, Dan connected with a couple of good shots there. Opened up a cut above and underneath it. How much did that impair your vision?
Oh, that's a scratch, man. That ain't nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, also, too, these fires in Hawaii, I don't believe that they were natural. I believe they were man-made. They're trying to take the land from the natives. And I want Dan Ige, a native Hawaiian, to lead this world in prayer against the power of Satan.
Well, congratulations on a great fight. Dan Ige, congratulations as well. Bryce Mitchell, Thug Nasty, tremendous performance, my brother.
Please let Dan pray.
Ladies and gentlemen, your winner, Thug Nasty, Bryce Mitchell.
And he does do a prayer. I know Michael Bisping was trying to kind of derail that. But, when I see things like that, when I see people speaking out in a way that might not be very popular or very understood at the time, when they have a platform. This is the kind of thing that I hope happens more, and I feel like it is happening more. And, if anyone has the opportunity to speak out about this, please take that opportunity to speak the truth, because I do believe we are in a battle between good and evil. And if we don't do anything or speak up, then evil will prevail. So, Shane, anything else you want to say about your experience reporting on Maui? Because this was the big event that we first started discussing.
Yeah, I had heard the rumors about Paradise up to beforehand, and then when Maui happened, I got to give a lot of credit to Eric West, not only for his drone videos and stuff, but for running into fish like he did. When I first started going through the videos and during the aftermath, trying to figure out what was going on, I came across the video with fish, and that was kind of one of the things that first clued me into the intentionality of it all. And then when I went through the rest of Eric's videos and I saw the aftermath footage, and just with my knowledge in physics and how fires work, it just seemed like this to me is the smoking gun.
Right. And I almost forgot, we wrote a book about this event, Sound the Alarm. You can still get this at themauibook.com as well as Amazon. And this has all of our research, way more than we covered today, as well as some of the other events that have happened since, and the history of geoengineering, and whether as a weapon, how this has been going on for decades, if not centuries. So thank you guys so much for being here. And if you're watching, please keep this story alive, keep talking about it, and hopefully we'll never forget. So with that, thank you guys, and we'll see you all soon. Bye.